What's up, everybody? This episode is with Dr. Morris Pickens, one of the top sports psychologists out there. He works with a lot of PGA Tour athletes such as Zach Johnson, Stewart Cink, and Lucas Glover, just to name a few. Arnold Palmer once said that your success in golf is based more on your strength of mind than strength of body, and that certainly is true for long drive as well. Since the first couple episodes of this show were a lot about physical training on how to get better in golf and long drive, this episode is really cool in that it highlights your mind and how that can help you get better. And absolutely, this episode has helped me. I'm sure it'll help you guys as well. I hope you enjoy. Also, this episode is sponsored in part by LagShot, my favorite training aid. So go to lagshotgolf.com/crush for 15% off. All right, well, Dr. Mo, it's really great to talk with you here. This is one of the podcasts that I've been really looking forward to, but also, to be honest, part of me doesn't want to record because I know it's going to help my competition. But thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Happy to speak with you and just see where it goes.
So I've been looking at a lot of your Instagram stuff on your website, Dr. Mo Learn to Win, and you put out so much good content for free. Like I was a couple of days ago, just going deep dive into your Instagram, and there are so many good things that are practical that people can carry over to their golf game. Like I was looking at the game where you say, if you're playing with somebody, you hit a drive, they hit a drive, and the competitor can move it 5 feet or 5 yards, or you have to make a putt again to confirm it. Stuff like that is so good, just to ingrain good habits, good mental discipline. So how do you come up with those?
Well, I mean, I kind of think through a lot of skills and things that happen on the golf course and places where I see people run into trouble. And especially with kids, if you can give them a game, right, then and they play it and they enjoy it, then they'll remember it. So two things. One is just to remember that your practice is always designed for, is this going to help me in competition? No one is going to give you a scorecard on the range or on the putting green, right? So you got to make sure that you're doing things that are designed to help you in competition, not just that make you feel good in the moment. And those are sometimes two different things. And then with the games, I just kind of think through like, okay, hey, what goes on? So one of the very first games I came up with was this game called two-step. Well, two-step is basically designed to help you hit greens in regulation, because I learned early on in my career working with juniors, I could tell them all day, hit it to the fat side of the green, play smart, those types of things, but it really didn't resonate. So two-step is a game where once you hit the ball on the green, I'm going to pick it up as your opponent, take 2 steps and drop it. So if what happens is, let's say there's a pin that's back right, and I'm playing with you, Steve, and you hit it kind of short left where you should have. I pick it up and you had a 18-footer, and now I make it 25 to 26 feet. So you have a longer putt, but you don't get penalized that much because you hit it in the correct location. Okay. Let's say we got 2 other guys in the group, or let's say I'm playing with you, but I hit it right of this back right pin. You pick it up, now take 2 steps, and it drops off into a bunker. Okay, so I got penalized. That's still better, though, to hit it on the green and get dropped in the bunker, because my bunker game's decent. I'm going to hit it out to 4 feet and hopefully make it. Another guy in our group, he hit it in the bunker. We don't do anything till he gets on the green. He hits the same bunker shot like me out to 4 feet, but then we take the 2 steps. Now he's got to make an 11-footer. Okay. So it really helps you kind of quickly learn, man, if I'm playing the way I'm supposed to and I hit the ball in the right position, then I'm not going to get penalized. But if I start hitting it on the short side of the green, or if I start missing greens, it gets really hard. And so that's really kind of where that came from, is I got to think of a way to help kids like learn this, because they're not learning it when I'm just telling them, hey, you got to play smarter. You need to hit it to the fat side of the green, because they're so used to picking up their rangefinder, shooting the flag, getting the exact number for the flag. And that's what they go at. And they need to learn the skill of, how to hit proper approach shots. And this game will teach them, because, we're gambling for 10 push-ups, or we're gambling for $1 or whatever we're gambling for at the end of our 5-hole stretch. And it's nothing to miss a 6-iron by 2 steps, effectively 7 or 8 feet. And this game will help them learn that. So So all the games are really designed to help people like think the way they're going to need to think in competition, because a lot of people, when they go play at their home course, they really don't use any course management because they've played there so often. They don't really have to think. And now the skill that they need when they get on the road in competition, they hadn't practiced it all because they don't need to on their home course.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
It does. Yeah. So then is the idea that they would ingrain that way of thinking of really intelligent shot placement when they're actually then in the tournament?
Right.
And it's just a
right.
subconscious
So the whole
thing?
idea is like, if I do this when I'm practicing, then I can use this in competition. So Jonathan Bird, actually one year, he just made up in his mind, okay, we had played this game a lot at home. This is around 2009 or 10 or 11. We played it one off season a lot at home because his numbers in approach were not that good the year prior. So we played this game pretty much every time we went out, and we might only do it for 9 holes. And then he made up in his mind when he went back out for the next year, anything 8 iron and above, I'm automatically playing 2-step in my mind. 9 iron and below, if I want to be more aggressive and hit it at the pin, then I can do that. And that year, I want to say he finished like 8th or 10th in greens in regulation, just from playing this game where 8 iron and above, it's automatically, I got to pretend like Mo's going to move this ball 2 steps, and it helped his approach play. Right. But so, yeah, you're trying to use these games because they help you when you get in competition. If I'm picking your ball up, if the T-ball game 5-step, if I'm picking your ball up and moving it 5 steps, right? Then when you get out and play in real golf, you start looking at, well, if I hit it there, what's 5 steps to the left or what's 5 steps to the right? It teaches you how to hit the middle of the fairway versus getting dropped in bunkers all the time. Because when I play, I'm not very nice. I mean, I'm playing to win. So
can you drop it like out of bounds or in water or anything?
Yeah.
Oh man.
If you hit it in the bunker, I'm going to drop it up in the lip of the bunker.
That's brutal. That's brutal.
So all the games are designed to, help you think better in practice and really not just go play kind of normal, casual, basically, not engaged golf at home.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't help you on the road. And so, on my Instagram, Dr. Mo Learn to Win, there's tons of these little games and kind of short things. You've seen them. All of those are about maybe 2 minutes. And then what you're going to get when you go to the website, Dr. Mo Learn to Win, is more thorough explanations of how these things work and how they're going to benefit you. So when you go to Dr. Mo Learn to Win, you can sign up for a program that gives you continuous tips like you're getting on Instagram, but then also, an interview with Zach Johnson or an interview I did with Davis Love, which was fascinating, about the mistake that almost cost him his career when he's basically trying to chase Greg Norman and too much attention on these other people. And so it's things like that. Yeah.
Well, you're one of the few accounts that I follow, and I wish I had found you earlier because I'm genuinely a big fan. But you put out the kind of content and it's free content and it's awesome, that makes me want more. It makes me want to subscribe to your programs and stuff like that. A lot of times when people put out their content, it feels like, oh, well, that's all the content they've got. And now, I appreciate it, but it seems like you just have the kind of stuff that would continually help you to get better and better and better. So I started reading The Winning Way in Life and Golf.
Yep.
And I'm only partway through right now, but it's been very interesting and very helpful. And I'm currently focusing on the routine. So you've got the 4R approach. And I don't expect you to summarize the whole book, but let me ask you in particular about routine, because that's something that I've given a lot of thought to, and had a lot of, I guess, consternation over, where I generally in my life don't particularly like routines. I feel like it makes me kind of, not claustrophobic, rigid. But I feel like I'm like stuck into it. So how do you develop a routine? Because it sounds like it's incredibly important. I've heard a lot of people say that you emphasize it very strongly. How do you go about developing a program for each individual?
Well, so the very first thing that I think where I differentiate from some other people and from what you hear on TV is I believe there's 2 parts around the ball, as you read in the book. But first is refocusing, which is figuring out the shot. So let's just all pretend that you're hitting a 6-foot putt, right? So you might go on the other side of the hole, you might not. you might go down on the low side, whatever you need to do to read this putt, right? That's what I call figuring out the math problem. That is not part of your routine, okay? And it does not need to be the same every time. You don't need to be so rigid figuring out how to play golf shots, because every golf shot, like a math problem, is different. Some math problems are 2 + 3, and some of them are 416 divided by the cube root of 8, right? And if that's the case, you got to do more. If I have a 4-footer at my home course and I have a 50-footer over a ridge on a course in the mountains I've never played, I'm not going to do the same thing to read that putt, right? But if we're watching golf on TV and a guy goes to the other side of the hole on 14, he comes back. A guy goes to the other side of the hole on 15, he comes back. And he doesn't do that on 16, especially if he misses the putt. The announcers are going to say, oh, he got out of his routine. He didn't go to the other side of the hole. I don't believe that at all, right? You have to separate what you're doing around the ball into this one section, refocusing, figuring out the math problem, which does not need to be consistent. You have total freedom. And then once you get into your routine, which doesn't start until you walk into the ball for the last time. So even if you walk in beside the ball and you do some stuff, but then you back out again to look at it one more time, that stuff was not part of your routine. Your routine is only once you walk into the ball for the last time. So most people's routine is really only about 8 to 10 seconds, but they think it's like, oh, I got to be rigid for 45 seconds to a minute. Mm-hmm. That's because they don't understand what they're doing around the ball. That's what I would argue. And they've listened to kind of some other information. I'm not saying the other information is bad, but I just don't agree with it. Mm-hmm. Right. And so then when you get into your routine, then you want to have consistency, because consistency in terms of how you're getting prepared to hit the shot gives you a better chance of consistency out when you actually swing the club and execute the shot. So if I do the same thing as I'm walking into the 6-foot putt, and I walk in, and we'll just take Zach Johnson, for example, and he takes one practice stroke looking down and then one practice stroke looking up, and then steps in first look, second look, and then hits it. He's got a chance, because he's doing the same thing, to get out of his body when he's in competition what he gets out of his body when he's in practice, because he's worked on this skill over and over and over, and it's the same thing. And so that's really the way I think about it, is you got to separate the two parts. Right. And then when you get into your routine, then you have to understand what makes it up. And what I mean by that is, so your routine should be like brushing your teeth. Right. So Steve, when's the last time you got real emotional brushing your teeth? Right.
I don't recall.
Yeah, never. Okay. And so you can learn how to hit putts like that, or learn how to hit tee shots like that. Because when you're brushing your teeth, it doesn't matter if you just got a Snapchat, or you're watching the Golf Channel, or you just got in an argument with your roommate or your mom, or anything could be going on. It's not going to change the way you brush your teeth. Well, you can learn how to go through your routine and hit a putt on the 35th hole when you're on the cut line, the same way that you hit a putt when you're on the putting green, at your house, right? If you make them the same and you really get into it. And so that's basically what I teach is, you're building a routine, not so that you can do a good routine, but so that you can't do a bad routine. Like I've got this so ingrained that this is what I'm going to do. And Stewart Cink used to talk about, once he walks in, it's over. I mean, I'm just running the program, and then the program, which is your routine, hits the shot for you. So literally at the end of your routine, the ball's just gone. And then you're like, okay, well, where'd it go? And then what you got to figure out, and this is where I think a lot of teachers that have really good intentions sometimes miss the mark a little bit, is your routine is not just physical in nature. Your physical routine is what you do. Like, what are the actions? Am I going to take that practice stroke looking down and practice stroke looking up, or I don't want any practice strokes or whatever? That's the first part, is your physical routine. And we can watch other people on TV and see what their physical routine is. What we can't know are their visual routines and their mental routines. Your visual routine is, how do you process the golf course with your eyes? Literally, where do your eyes go? And your eyes can jump around very quickly. So you have to learn how to manage them so that they're going where you want them to go. And they're focused on maybe hitting it 15 feet left of the pin, like we're talking about in the game 2-step, versus jumping to the pin, right? Just because emotionally I want to make a birdie. Mm-hmm. So that's your visual routine. And then your mental routine is really, how do you occupy your mind to keep out the other junk that's trying to get in there when you're in competition, because you want your mental routine to be very choreographed so that you're managing your thinking. You're never trying to go blank over the ball.
Excuse me for a second. I want to tell you real quick about my favorite training aid and a sponsor of the podcast, the Lag Shot. It's designed with what they call lag flex technology that'll help you to create and maintain more lag in your swing, which will give you better consistency and more speed, which we all want, right? But my favorite part is that you can go out and actually hit balls with it. It's a real club. They make a driver, a 7-iron, and a wedge. So you can incorporate it into your practice sessions to ingrain the better technique that it's teaching you. Once you try it, you'll see why I love it. Go to lagshotgolf.com/crush or click the link in the description below to get 15% off. lagshotgolf.com/crush.
And I'll get some people that just say, well, I just want to go blank. Or I'll hear a parent tell their kid, well, just don't think about anything, walk up and hit it. That's impossible. Your brain is so fast. It's way faster than we can talk even in this podcast. But so you're not going to go blank. I tell all my students, look, if I had a pill that would make you go blank, I'd be a gazillionaire because every golfer in the world would buy it, right?
That's for sure.
So it's a matter of managing your mind. And to give you an example, so Nick Watney, he may still not do this now, but what he used to do when we were working together, he would count the 6 in his putting routine. So as he walked in, he had a very simple routine, no practice strokes. He would walk in, he'd set the putter in, he used the line on the ball, and he'd match up the line on the putter with the line on the ball and tell himself 1, the number 1. Then he would get his feet set, that's 2. He would look up at his target, which for him was his start target, that's 3. Back to the ball on the specifically the back of the ball, that would be 4. Backstroke is 5. Through stroke is 6. So if we could somehow magically cut open his skull and look into his brain, if we're supposed to see 2, we're never going to see 4. And if there's supposed to be a number there, it's not going to be blank. What's getting ready to come through his mind when he's over the ball is very choreographed.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want my players to have. Now, there is no best routine, physically, visually, or mentally. If there were, somebody would have already figured it out. And every tour player would be doing it. Okay.
So then is it trial and error for the individual?
Yes. So it's trial and error, and you have to kind of figure out, okay, what do I want to do? When I'm helping a kid develop their long game routine, we hit the same basic shot, like 9-iron, to the one target over and over, so we can kind of minimize the results and actually focus on the routine. Technically, you don't even have to hit a ball when you're working on your routine, but it's more fun if you do. But like for them, I usually will take them inside and we'll hit shots into a net so that they don't even get to see where the ball goes, so they can truly focus on the routine. Like I would want you to work on your putting routine at home, putting to a chair leg 4 feet away. Like, okay, what do I want to do here? Because sometimes if you're on the putting green or the golf course, you can get too into the results, and the results should never dictate like what routine you want to go with. A lot of times I tell players the best way to develop your routine is watch the best players in the world on TV, see what you like, what you don't like, how you think you might want to get into it. Do you want to take practice swings? Not. How do you want to do that? And then like, okay, here's what I think I want to do. And then you're going to have to go play around with it to kind of figure out, this is what I want to do. I would tell you to set up your physical routine first, because if you can set up your physical routine first, then you can put the vision and the mental part in once that's already developed. Because one of the key things at the end of everybody's routine that they have to figure out is, when is my last look at the target going to be? Because if you take different amounts of looks at the target, it automatically changes the amount of time in your mind that needs to get out. So if Nick Watney took an extra look, was he going to count to 8, or what is he, right? So that's what I mean by you got to have great choreography in your mind to help you stay consistent over the ball. Because really what you're trying to do in golf, when you're practicing, you're trying to build competent reactions, so that for you as a guy, doing long drive, that when you take the club away, it's where you want it to be. That when you're at the top of the backswing, you where it want it to be. Like having a great mental thought isn't necessarily going to accomplish that. You're going to build the swing that you want in physical practice and get that reaction to be the way you want it. But then what you want on the golf course is you want a system that allows you to stay free and react so that you're not swinging with tension or fear through impact, because that's where you're going to make mistakes, is when you have tension and fear through impact, whether that's a putt or a chip or a long game shot. That's what causes players to hit shots that they never hit in casual golf in competition. Is they have this fear and tension through impact, and you hit this duck hook that you hadn't hit in 2 years on the range, and you hit it on the 35th hole at the US Open. That's not a bad swing, right? And I don't know this. We would have to ask Mito Pereira what happened, but he alluded to it on the last hole of the PGA, right? He hit a shot that he hadn't hit because, some of that kind of awareness of the moment, I'm about to win a major, got into his thinking. And if we could somehow cut open it, it's likely that what he was thinking there wasn't the same as what he had thought on some other shots, and it affected his body differently. Mm-hmm. Now, again, I'm not saying that's what happened. We would really have to ask him to know that's what happened. But I know that has happened to my players before, for sure, because Stewart Cink, he's a great communicator. He would tell me, look, intellectually, I understand what you're saying. Emotionally, I just can't apply it in the moment every time, right? Yeah. It's like your body has a mind of its own. But that's where you got to work to overcome that.
Yeah, for sure. One of the themes that I've been picking up in your book and in your Instagram work is how to properly remove emotion from the shot. And by being very, factual about it, where you say, okay, I've got a 20-foot putt uphill, breaking left to right, that kind of stuff. It removes the process or the possibility then for you to say, oh, well, I feel really amped up. I feel like this is a really important putt. And just by being more factual about it, it seems like an incredibly valuable step. But like you're saying, the actual execution of it can be a little bit tricky.
Right. And I think the more you can approach things unemotionally, the better you're going to be. Mm-hmm. And so one of the ways that I tell players how to do that, right, is to literally get into the physical aspects of a shot or a putt as much as they can, as you were kind of talking about. And if you go back, seems like we've been mentioning Stewart a lot this morning, but if you go back and you look at the video from the Open Championship in 2009, what you'll see is Stewart Cink literally like mumbling to himself before he hits every putt. And what he was saying, because we had only started 2 months prior to that, what he was saying to himself was the distance, slope, and break of every putt: 10 feet downhill, left to right, 20 feet straight uphill, right? And so he's just kind of mumbling that to himself, right? And, So
it sure worked.
So, it worked really well. And so anything that you can do to kind of take that out of it helps. What we tend to do as golfers, we tend to make things emotional because we talk the way that we've heard it on TV. And what they say on TV is, oh, and this is Friday afternoon, like today, and they're playing at Memorial. Oh, this guy's got an 8-footer for birdie to go 7 under and be 2 back of the lead. And he's going into the weekend and get his first win. I mean, way, way out in the future.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, look, we got 38 holes left. This is not going to be the deciding factor in the tournament. But the reason they say that is they don't want you to change the channel and start watching the French Open, right? Yeah. So they got to make it dramatic. But you don't want to, talk to yourself the way they talk on TV. And I tell my juniors, look, when you watch golf on TV, I'd prefer if you turn the volume off, because that just kind of emphasizes the drama and the emotion, and that's not what we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. That's the way you're trying to go about it. So the 2 things that don't matter, though, it doesn't matter what a putt is for, and it doesn't matter how the ball got there. We care as golfers a lot how the ball got there, because I ask a lot of my students, I say, how you feel about a 5-foot putt? So I'll ask you, Steve, how you feel about a 5-foot putt?
Pretty good.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's say you hit a really good chip shot to 5 feet. How do you feel?
Pretty good.
Okay. So you hit a 5-iron out of the woods over the water to 5 feet. How do you feel?
I'm going to feel a little bit better.
Yeah. Okay. Now you got a 9-foot putt and above the hole and you run it 5 feet by. How do you feel?
Not as good. That's for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we care about how it got there. But the reality is it's 5 feet uphill, right to left. It makes no difference how it got there. And once you get to be really great at separating, right, then that helps your golf. And the best player that I work with from a mental skill wise in terms of separation would be Zach Johnson. He is unbelievable at separating shots, separating hole to hole, separating nines, separating days. And it's not an innate skill. It's something he's really worked at. It's something he's tried to get better at. And literally, it doesn't matter, what I did on the first 3 holes. This is the 4th hole. I'm going to play the 4th hole. Right. And you got to learn how to do that. Once you get to where you can shoot about 75, I tell this to all my students is I already know what you're going to shoot for the rest of your life. You're going to 95% of the holes you play, you're going to make between a 2 and a 6. Not going to make many 1s, not going to make many 7s or worse. And 85 of that 95%, you're going to make a 3, 4, 5. Okay. If we look at all your scorecards for competitive golfers in the last year, they make a tons of 3s, 4s, and 5s. They make more 3s, it's closer to the 60s. They make more 5s, it's closer to the 80s. Okay. So if we just accept that, like, hey, I'm going to go make some 3s, 4s, and 5s, and we'll see how it turns out. But what happens is we don't do that. We go out and let's say we got 3 par 4s to start, and we start off 3, 4, 3. We're thinking, man, okay, I'm 200 through 3, and this is a good day. My teacher knows what they're talking about. And that time with Mo was helpful. My girlfriend or my boyfriend, they're better looking today. Like, I'm on cloud 9, right? And then we start off 5, 4, 5. And we're thinking, oh man, I'm so sick of playing like this. I'm not sure my teacher knows what he's talking about. And that time with Mo was a waste of time. And, my girlfriend's driving me crazy. I mean, we're in a totally different place. But the reality is you can be 200 through 3 and still play poor. You can be 2 over through 3 and still play great. You got to be able to go to the next hole, regardless of what you've just done. And like, okay, how do I play this hole? So sometimes students ask me, how do tour players, get 6 under through 11 and then keep it going and shoot 8 or 9 under? And the basic answer is they're not 6 under through 11. They're just on the 12th hole like it's the first hole.
Yeah.
They're playing every hole like it's the first hole. And the more you can do that, the more you can get great at separating, the better you're going to be able to do that. And that's why Zach Johnson has had a lot of the success that he's had is he's really good with his scoring clubs, his driver, his wedges, and his putter from how golf is played and kind of how the math works out. But he's also great at the mental skill of separation. And so I would just encourage your listeners, if you've never thought about working on that as a skill, like, hey, devote this summer to getting better at separating. And in y'all's world, right? Long drive, right? You get multiple drives and you're trying to qualify or you're in the finals or wherever you are right? You got to be able to separate the T-ball you just hit and not overreact to it because you pull that one way left out of the grid. And like, okay, can I just separate and pretend like this is the first drive that I'm hitting? And the guys that can do that better, right, are the guys that have more success. And
it's one of the tough things where, going back to what you were saying, as far as being overly attached and you'll end up basically steering a shot where if you have 6 shots and if you hit 3 of your drives OB, you're going to start to have that tendency. Well, maybe I should, just try to kind of ease off and hit it down the middle. And that 99% of the time does not work out well for you.
Yeah. Right. And the reason that doesn't work out well is because that's not what you practice.
Yeah.
Right? You don't practice that way for long drive. You practice, swinging basically full out, but keeping it within the grid. Right. So one of the things is like, okay, well, when you're in practice, do you make the grid smaller? Because if you make the grid smaller in practice, it's going to make the one in competition bigger.
Yeah.
Right. That would be a thought. And then the other one is, do you have a great mental routine, or are you just living and dying with the emotion of placing this ball in the grid? Because if you're trying to place the ball in the grid, then you're going to be impact conscious. Right. And when you swing your best, you're not impact conscious, whether it's putting, chipping, long drive, anything. The ball just kind of gets in the way of the movement that you're making. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's what I would encourage golfers and, guys in the long drive, ladies in the long drive to do, the less ball conscious you can be, the better you're going to perform.
Yeah, that's great advice. Let me ask you a little bit of a deviation, but it's off the same topic.
Yeah.
I found that I play my best both in long drive and tournament golf on days where I have a very kind of consistent thought, whether it's like one swing feeling or one maybe habit in my routine, but that varies because then maybe I'll have the tendency to overdo it and maybe it's just not as solidified. It's not the right. So what do you tell someone like that who just, I guess, you put a post up a few days ago or maybe a couple of weeks ago about the 3 different kinds of people, how they react to a shot. If they get angry, if they question their technique, or if they get like, mopey and sad. So I certainly get angry, but I tend to probably question the technique and say, oh, well, did I change this or that?
Right.
What do you tell people then, to not have it be jumping around of like, oh, swing left or swing right, or use my arms, my legs, that kind of thing.
Right. So basically what that would fall into the category is what to do when swinging poorly, whether you're playing golf or right. And so I'm a big believer that you can change pre-swing things. Okay. So I can change my aim. I can change my alignment. I can change my posture. I can technically change the tempo. That's really kind of the only thing so you can change pre-swing things. You wouldn't change your swing or your swing thought during that competitive round or competitive event. Because if it's already been working, I don't want to change it on the 3rd hole. And then I'm thinking, well, maybe I should do this. And then that didn't work. And then I change it again on the 7th. Now I'm on like the 12th hole and I'm on my 3rd swing thought. Well, you're basically doomed, right?
Yeah.
But you can for sure. And this goes into the mental part of your routine. So even though Nick Watney was counting in his putting, he would definitely use technical thoughts in his long game. A lot of one that he used to use was keep his width. But so if he's thinking about that, he wouldn't change that during a round. But if keep his width wasn't having success for a day or 2 days or definitely a week, then he might go and he might get with his teacher and change that. And so then the next tournament out, he's got a different thought. So that can change. And some players will keep the same kind of thought for, maybe a couple months. Like Keegan Bradley's been playing well lately. So he's been kind of going with the same swing thought in his long game routine for the last few months. But if that gets stale, or if he gets into where he's not swinging and hitting the way he wants it to, then we'll play around with changing that up. But once he's on the course in competition, that would not change, right? But it could change after the round or between events or that sort of thing. So that's the way we would really approach that. Is you definitely are going to come up at times in your career where you're going to need to change your thought that's in your mind, but you would avoid changing an actual swing thought during competition, and you would change pre-swing things as a way to try to manage it. Because you only have one job when you're on the golf course, and that's to manage your thinking so that you can manage the ball to shoot the lowest score possible. And when you're managing your thinking to manage the ball in competition, you keep the same swing thought and change the pre-swing things. That's what I would advise.
That sounds great. I'm going to go try that out later today. That makes perfect sense. Let me then ask you, as far as removing emotion, it seems like it's harder in golf because you do have so much time in between shots. In long drive is a little bit different, but you still have a decent amount of time between shots. And that seems to make it a little bit harder harder in some ways, in that, like, if we're playing baseball or football or whatever, you have those like really intense moments where you just don't have time to think about it and you have to react, which is the 3rd R. But if you have the more time to think about it, how do you still maintain that ability to react?
Okay. Well, sports are different depending on, and different parts of sports can be different, whether the projectile is coming at you or you're controlling the projectile. So if you're playing basketball, you're playing football, and the ball's coming at you, that's literally what occupies your mind. So you don't have to think that much. So it's easier to react. But when you're responsible for the movement of the projectile, so I'm shooting a free throw, or I'm throwing the pitch, or I'm hitting the golf ball, now I consciously want to choose what I'm going to think about to initiate the movement of this projectile. That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay. So when you're doing that, basically what you're doing is you built this routine so that at the end of the routine, right, the routine just hits the shot for you and you react, right? So that's kind of how kind of more reactionary sports differ from less reactionary sports, or when the projectile's coming versus when you're removing it. In terms of golf and the time between points, or between shots, right, is you got to learn how to separate yourself, get your mind on something else, and then come back to what you're doing. So, I still, if I'm working with a tennis player, I still want them to relax between points, right? And then if they're getting ready to serve or return serve, a little bit different would be going on mentally, because one guy's initiating the movement of the projectile and the other guy's receiving it. And so it's going to be easier mentally for a guy receiving than it is when the guy's hitting the serve.
Mm-hmm.
But both of them have to relax in between points.
Mm-hmm.
And in golf, you just have a longer time. So you have to learn. And that is a skill where you get better at relaxing in between shots, and you work on that just like you work on other things.
Mm-hmm.
Looking up in the trees, checking out the wildlife, having conversations. But that is something you want to do.
So on the note of improving your skills on that routine, the reacting, I'm going to throw you on the spot here and ask, because you've put out so many great games and tips and strategies for people in the tournament side of things, can you come up with one or two, whether it's like a mental workout or an actual drill in practice, that would carry over for long drive, or would be more specific for long drive?
Okay. Well, so one thing is, let's just go with the visual real quick, right? So one thing is, you want your vision to be specific, because your mind takes its cues from your vision. So wherever you're looking, right, is going to then tell that to your mind. So like, if I let you look at my watch real quick and then I take it away, you didn't get to see much, right? But if I let you look at it longer, I didn't change my watch, but you're better able to process it. So you want your vision to really hone in on where you're going. And it's kind of like that, line in the movie, The Patriot, aim small, miss small, right? And a lot of people have heard that. Well, the way you actually practice that for competition is this: throughout your average day, as you're walking around, you just pick something really little that's in your environment, and you look at it and see if you can keep your focus on it for a good solid 2 to 3 seconds. So like right now, I'm looking at where the key goes in. I got a door over here that goes into a part of my house, and it's got a key slot. And I'm just looking at that, and I can really see the difference in where the key would go up and then where it would come back down, and I can focus on that. And so you can walk around in your environment and learn how to let your vision really get focused on things, so that that becomes a part of, like, I'm going to use this in competition, so that I'm not just turning my head and kind of glancing out into the grid somewhere. Like, no, I'm looking right there, and you can practice that skill. That makes sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. And then, like, if you wanted, you could do the same thing mentally, right? So mentally get into a place where there's other things going on. So you're at work, or you're in an office building, or you got just family around, and just see if, while you're looking at something, can you keep a thought in your head, right? And that thought could be the vision of you making a good swing, or that thought could be, just pausing at the top. Right. So I'm envisioning myself like Hideki Matsuyama. Can I pause at the top? And can I think about that, even though I got these other things going on, and block that out? Right. So you can practice kind of mentally staying focused on something, or visually staying focused in both, and then transfer that to competition, But most people, what most people do is they expect things to show up in competition, even though they hadn't practiced them. They just learned them from their instructor. They heard about it, like from me on a podcast. Well, if you don't practice it, it's not going to just magically happen.
Right. Well, golf to me seems like one of the really weird sports and games where on some days it seems like the easiest thing. You go out and everything is happening how you want it. And on other days, it is the hardest thing that I've ever done. So I'm excited to be practicing and putting into practice more of what you've been teaching. And I know it's going to help.
Yeah. Well, good. I hope it does. And and I hope your listeners will get something out of this that they can use in their own game. And then if they're interested in, like you said, going a little bit deeper, check out Dr. Mo Learn to Win on Instagram, and then definitely Dr. Mo Learn to Win .com, on the website, and you can really get into some good stuff. And not only from me, but I'm going to have a travel section in there where I basically interview caddies and players about, what's going on and how you need to be thinking about things. I'm going to I'm not 100% exactly how that's going to go, but I know I got some good questions in mind already that I think would help listeners about, okay, hey, what is it really like, when you're on the cut line or when you're coming down the stretch, or, what people don't realize, those guys get nervous on the first tee just like you do. I mean, I have a client, I'm not going to mention his name, but I have a client, and we're on the putting green. It's his first year at Augusta, and we'll kind of finish with this, but we're on the putting green, and it's the Thursday morning, the Masters, and he wears Oakley sunglasses, and the plastic nose piece falls off. Okay. He picks it up and he takes his glasses off. He can't get the nose piece back on the glasses because he's shaking so bad. Right. And I'm like, hey, you're fine. Give me your glasses. I put the nose piece back on. I'm like, you're just excited, man. You're excited. You got these people, you're going to do great. But I mean, you could tell he was literally, and this is a guy that had already won multiple times on tour, right? All in the same year. And so he's going to the first tee at Augusta. He literally bombs it down the right side. He's got 110 into the first hole at Augusta, which is ridiculous. And, but it's just, he was anxious and nervous and excited. And as long as you interpret that the right way and don't equate that being nervous means you're going to play poor, because that's actually not true at all. Right. It just means I'm excited and I'm ready to go. Then you can, have great success even when you don't feel like you do on quote a normal day. So,
Let me ask you one more thing, and then I know you got to run.
Yep.
How do you explain, or how do you teach people to do it more, where you see these players whether it's Scotty Scheffler now or Stewart Cink, whatever it was, maybe a few months ago, where they're just going on a tear. Like they all of a sudden, like they're playing, some mixed results, and then all of a sudden it skyrockets. Like they get one win or they get one good finish, and everything seems great for a period of time.
Right. Well, I think you enjoy the moment for sure, and you realize, hey, I got it going. The biggest thing I would say when you're playing great, right, is to capture what you're doing. So many people, like amateurs, they walk off the golf course and they play great. Hey, what happened? I don't know. I just play great. Well, if you don't know, it's going to be hard to repeat that, man. Right. But so if my guys are playing really good, right, and they've played good and they've had a good stretch, they don't have to win. It doesn't have to be a win, but they just have played really good, like Keegan Bradley has been playing very, well recently. And one of the things that we make sure we do is we video his routines so that we see what's going on. His putting routine, his long game routine, his short game routine. Two ways. One is real time and see what he's doing. And the other one is him talking to me while I'm videoing it so that we have what he's thinking. Again, to go back to Nick Watney, to counting 1 to 6, so that we know what the choreography is in his mind and that we have that captured. So if we need to go back to it 6 months, if he's not playing as well, we have that. And we're not just like, I think I was doing this. No, we got it documented, man. Yeah. This is exactly what you're doing. We can see how they're walking in. So when you're playing really good golf, the main thing is to document that. I would encourage you listeners to do that on video, maybe journal if you're into writing, but definitely document what's going on so that you can go back to it, because, it will not stay great all the time. You just got to realize and accept as a golfer, there are going to be some peaks and there are going to be some valleys, and you're just trying to minimize the valleys. So,
yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the cool things for me about this podcast is that I get to talk with people that I'm genuinely interested in and love learning from. So I can't thank you enough for coming on here. Everybody go check out Dr. Mo Learn to Win on Instagram. Like I said, you put out a lot of great content there that people can watch every day, and check out drmolearntowin.com as well.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much. And another couple of days here at home, 8 to 10 days at home, and then headed up to Boston for the US Open, and we'll see how that goes.
Awesome. Well, best of luck to you. I'd love to pick your brain some more, but this has been great, and I really appreciate your time.
All righty. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Mo.